Well, I want to welcome everyone to our first bond virtual presentation to provide you with information exactly how we've gotten to where we are today and where we are asking our community for a vote come August 22nd for a special 2020 bond election, which will go to fund many of our most needed projects here in Cabell County Schools. At this time, I would like for Mr. Flowers just to provide a little bit of an overview as to how you can ask questions or even give us feedback as I present this evening. Mr. Flowers, can you give a little scenario there?
Sure, absolutely. Welcome, everybody. We're glad to have you here on our live event tonight. What we're going to do is the superintendent's going to give an overview of the bond, and then we're going to have a question and answer session. You'll see a question mark in the upper right part of your screen at the end of the meeting, at the end of the presentation. Then we'll open up the questions. You'll be able to type your questions there, and the superintendent will answer those as we go. So first, he's going to just give you everyone an overview of what's included in the bond project. We thank everyone for coming tonight.
All right, thank you, Mr. Flowers. Sure to appreciate it. We in Cabell County are very excited about what the future holds for our schools and our school district, and we are so appreciative of our community for continuing to support our schools and our educators and our community.
Mr. Saxe, you got muted, I think.
I'm going to back up then, and I've actually noticed that I'm already having an issue with my presentation screen. If you'll just hold 1 minute here, I'm going to need to. Okay. How did we get to where we are today? And so the first thing that is really important to understand is that over the past year, the school district has been working collaboratively with our community to develop a 10-year comprehensive educational facilities plan. Now, this 10-year plan is something that all school districts across the state of West Virginia were required to do. And in Cabell County, we had just basically completed our last facilities plan, 10-year facilities plan with the construction of a new Highland Elementary. So this process began back in October, where we had an educational futures conference. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. But through this comprehensive educational facilities plan, we developed 4 major priorities that were established through the steering committee for the comprehensive facilities plan, as well as through community input, through surveys, community dialogue meetings, and the Educational Futures Conference. But these 4 priorities were specifically no school consolidations, that our community members, our parents, our teachers, and our students, for that matter, value our schools, our small community-based schools. In addition, we feel that we need to address our outdated facilities. And when we think about our outdated facilities, a lot of times what I like to talk about is to reflect upon Cabell Midland High School and Huntington High School. Many people remember, myself included, because I was actually in a middle school classroom at the old Ona Junior High when Cabell Midland was being built. And it's hard to believe, but those 2 facilities are nearing 30 years of age. And so that's just one example of issues that we know that we may have to address, because after 30 years, there are obviously going to be things that need to be addressed in a building. But we have several buildings, 4 to be exact, that were actually built before 1945. And so with a building that comes with that level of age, there are even more significant issues that need to be addressed. So that's the second priority. We need to make sure that we're addressing our outdated facilities. The third thing established through the facilities plan was that we need to make sure that we are addressing safe school entrances. So what is a safe school entrance, you may be asking? Well, a safe school entrance is an entryway where when a visitor comes to a school, that they can't access anywhere else in the building until they've signed in and actually spoken with an adult, and then they're buzzed into the rest of the school, should they be permitted to do so. This is a safety feature that has been implemented over the past decade and a half in many schools across the country. And in fact, all of our middle schools that have been built, as well as any new school construction in the last 10 years in Cabell County, already have these safe school entrances. And you as a parent or a community member or an educator may already be familiar with what that looks like. But we still have some schools that do not, which includes our 2 high schools. And so making sure that we're addressing our safe school entrances is also a fundamental priority developed through the facilities plan. And then finally is the modernization and expansion of our career and technical education programs in the county. You know, one of the things that we do well here in Cabell County is making sure that all of our students are prepared to graduate college and career ready. And one of the things that we need to be able to do is we need to continue to elevate and put front and center our high quality career and technical education programs. But one of the things that we have not been able to do since the building was actually built in 1981, I believe it is we really haven't been able to modernize and expand our career and technical education facilities and classrooms. And that's one of the goals over the next 10 years that the facility plan tries to address. So as we think about the comprehensive educational facilities plan, I want to take a quick look and show you the process that we've gone through to get to establishing these 4 criteria. So again, when we started, we conducted an educational futures conference to receive input from our community. From this educational futures conference, we asked the attendees, what should the schools in Cabell County look like in the next 30 to 40 years? Because I just mentioned our high schools are nearing 30 years of age. So what the community did back in the early 90s set the stage for what those high schools would still look like and be offering today. So as we began this process back in October, we wanted the same questions to be asked, because what we do over the next 10 years with our facilities will have to last the county for 30 to 40 years and beyond. From the Educational Futures Conference, we invited anybody that wanted to be on the CEFP, that Facilities Planning Steering Committee, the opportunity to sign up and be a part of that process. And we had a lot of people that showed interest and came to many different meetings to be able to sort of work with that steering committee. The steering committee worked through community dialogue meetings, a survey where we had a large number of responses from the community, which included parents, students, and school district employees, to identify our greatest district facility needs. This committee then met after hearing from, again, the community dialogues, the survey, and then their own sort of field trip, if you will, to each of our facilities to determine really what they look like, what the issues were from our maintenance and operations folks. And from this information, they prioritized these school needs into 3 different levels. It was high, moderate, and low. They then presented these recommendations to the Cabell County School Board, and the Cabell County School Board approved these recommendations from the steering committee. Then a district team began to formulate a plan to address the greatest facility needs, specifically those high priority issues, and to see if there was a way that we could look at a funding mechanism to get those high need projects done as rapidly as possible. And that's what brings us to today as we think about a 2020 school bond election. If approved, if the school bond is approved in August, that's when the design process begins, and that process is in and of itself very inclusive of community dialogues, stakeholder input as it relates to each project. And so as decisions are made about what those facilities will look like and feel like, and whatever else is on the hearts and the minds of our stakeholders, we want to hear that as we begin the design of those schools and how those needs are going to be accommodated. And then finally, as those projects are underway, we will then look to address the other priorities within the Comprehensive Educational Facilities Plan, specifically the projects that are moderate on the list. What you will find is that all of the projects that we have listed in the bond, they are inclusive of every high need project that was listed from the CEFP steering committee, as well as a few others that are ranked at the moderate level as well. So that brings us to the project list that is in this 2020 bond. So the included projects will include at Cabell Midland High School and Huntington High School renovations, which will include but are not limited to specifically safe school entrances. Safe school entrances will be the priority in these renovations, which, as you can imagine, from the two largest high schools in the state of West Virginia, are fairly large projects, and we'll also make sure that generations to come have a safe school entrance to ensure the right people are in the building at the right times. And then also we have Nichols Elementary, which will include a safe school entrance, because that school does not yet have a safe school entrance, a sprinkler system, new windows, doors, a roof, and an HVAC. A lot of times these items are called in our facilities plan deferred upgrades, and that's exactly what these are for Nichols Elementary. At Height-Saunders, Height-Saunders is going to include, but again, it could be more than a sprinkler system, new windows, doors, a roof, and heating and air, HVAC. Both Nichols Elementary and Height-Saunders Elementary, their air systems are mostly window units. And so one of the things that a lot of times the window air conditioning units are very loud, and so sometimes teachers have to turn those off when they're providing instruction. The windows at both of those schools are in great need of being replaced, and through the approval of the bond, those projects will be able to be accomplished through both of those sites. The other bond projects, which are very significant for the bond, is a new Meadows Elementary to be built either on its current site or relocated to a different site within the area of where Meadows actually sits. A new Davis Creek Elementary to be replaced on a different site than where the current Davis Creek Elementary sits. A new Milton Elementary to be either replaced on its current site or moved to a nearby site which is already owned by the school board. The second site that is being considered here is actually the site of the old Milton Middle School. And the reason this site is being considered is that there is a proposed new Milton flood wall that is supposed to go in, and when the flood wall goes in, it takes away one of the concerns that we have with the current site is that it's in a floodway, and so being able to move the school to another site could be something that will be positive, especially if the flood wall comes to fruition. And then finally, we have the Cabell County Career and Technology Center, which could be either renovated on its current site and expanded on its current site, or moved to a new location, which could include near the Huntington Mall, specifically the former Sears building. It's really important to note that the logistics of renovating the current Career Center and adding on at its current site does have some limitations. The existing Career Center actually sits on about 45 acres. And a lot of times I sort of joke that that's 45 West Virginia acres, meaning that all 45 acres really can't be used for the expansion of the facility. The expansion of the facility is really limited to the existing parking lots. And so one of the concerns we have is if we replace it on its current site, it could limit the amount of parking that would be available as we continue to expand projects. And so that's one of the reasons that we are looking at the Sears building, because it more than doubles our square footage, as well as has ample opportunities for expansion on the property in years to come. As we think about this 2020 bond proposal, I really want to make sure that everyone understands what this means for our community and what the community investment really will look like. So when we think about all of the projects in total that we've just discussed, we're looking at about $107 million worth of projects that need to be completed. However, what we're asking the community to approve is an $87.5 million bond package. And so the way we get to the 107 is that if the voters approve an $87.5 million bond package, then the school district will be kicking in an additional $10 million, and the school building authority, who we've had direct conversations with, we will be asking to match the county's funding of 10. So we'll have an additional $20 million added to the bond sale of 87.5 to get us that $107 million investment. And we've been meeting with local economic development leaders and community leaders to share with them this district plan. And we've already received support from the Huntington Regional Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Huntington Area Development Council. And so between HADCO and the Regional Chamber of Commerce, the feedback that they've given us has been invaluable as we look to how this investment will really benefit the community. And when we talk about that community investment, according to the West Virginia Contractors Association, their total impact on the economy here in Cabell County, because of the $107 million in construction projects that will be going on over the next 18 to 24 months, the community can expect about a $321 million direct investment right here on the local economy. And so I think that that's a really important thing to mention is that the economic impact goes well beyond just the purchasing, just the labor and the purchasing of the bricks and mortar, so to speak, to build these facilities. There's a really good return on that investment here in the community. As we think about the impact on our taxpayers, though, we also want to make sure that our taxpayers know what it is that we're asking them to approve and what they would be having to pay on this $87.5 million. The other important thing to note here is that the 2006 bond, which went to build Milton Middle School, Barbersville Middle School, Huntington Middle School, Southside Elementary, and Martha Elementary, will be coming up for final payment this year by the school district. And so the 2020 bond, if approved, will not take effect until the 2006 bond is completely paid off. So this is not a tax that our community is not used to already paying. It's really a tax that has been here, and we're asking to continue in order to pay for these projects. The other thing that's really important to note here is compared to the 2006 bond, which was sold at 5% interest, being able to pass a bond right now and sell these bonds for these projects is really a prime time when you talk about lending, because at today's market, around 2.5%, a homeowner that has a $100,000 home would be expecting to pay around $6.29 per month for this $87.5 million bond project. For all of the school projects that we're mentioning here, they would be looking at a $6.29 per month investment, or $75.48 on the year. It's also important to think about, though, that many of our homeowners have the homestead exemption. And if you have a $100,000 home under the homestead exemption, you're actually only going to be paying around $4.19 or $50.32 per year for all of these projects. We also, though, want to plan that if interest rates were to increase, that we would not approve anything, we would not sell anything over 5%. And so the maximum that a homeowner would expect to pay for all of these projects is about $7.50 per month or $90 per year on that $100,000 home. However, again, with the homestead exemption, they would be looking at a $5 per month fee or $60 per year for all of these properties or projects. And so it's really important to note here that this is very much the worst case scenario as it relates to the interest rate is exactly what was proposed to voters and they approved for the 2006 bond projects. We have several other virtual bond presentations coming up, and we invite you to participate. Each of these bond presentations will dig deeply into the specific issues at the sites and what the proposed options would be if the bond was to be approved. And so we invite our community and our stakeholders to participate on Monday, July 13th for Davis Creek Elementary, Monday, July 20th, we will be talking about our high school safe school entrances. On Monday, July 27th, we will be discussing the potential for a new Milton Elementary. On Monday, August 3rd, Meadows Elementary. And then finally, on Thursday, August 6th, the Cabell County Career and Technology Center. You know, the other thing that I really forgot to mention here is that as we think about all of these projects and we reflect upon the 2006 bond, it's really important to consider all of the projects that the school district through financial planning was able to accomplish because of the 2006 bond. As I mentioned, the projects in the 2006 bond did not include Huntington East Middle School, renovations at Culloden Elementary School, the brand new renovated Explorer Academy, the safe school entrances at Spring Hill, Altizer, and Crossroads Academy, and finally, the new Highland Elementary. All of those projects were able to be accomplished, which were in the last 10-year plan because the 2006 bond passed and we were able to take care of those most pressing district issues at that time. And I think that really the same thing applies here is when we think about the 2020 bond proposal that we are trying to address our most pressing district needs so that we have the financial capability to address all of the other issues that we need over the life of the 10-year plan, and that those district finances can go toward those projects as well as other issues that may come up. So at this time, and of course, early voting begins Friday, August 7th, and we're asking you to go to the polls on August 22nd and cast your vote. You can also learn more information about our bond proposal by visiting cabellschools.com and selecting the About Us tab, and you'll find information on the CEFP as well as the proposed bond. So with that being said, Mr. Flowers, do we have any questions, comments, or issues that I can help address?
I have just opened the Q&A, and so if anybody would like to type in their questions, you just look at the little icons at the top right of your screen. There's a question mark, and click on that. You'll see the Q&A. If you'd like to type your questions there, we'd appreciate it. Apologize to those of you that joined the other meeting. Apparently, when we created this meeting, it duplicated a second meeting, which is what Mr. Saxe was in originally there. But we got them all transferred over to this meeting pretty quickly. But thank you all for your patience. The Q&A is open. If anybody has any questions, please put them in there, and we will be happy to answer your questions. And we will be publishing, by the way, all those dates of the upcoming meetings on our website tonight at cabellschools.com, and we're going to send those out to social media following this meeting as well.
Sounds great.
Do we have any questions? Anybody want to try? How about one of the staff members give it a try and just make sure that we've got a good
I see a question from one of our incoming board members. Mrs. Bond is asking, how long does the bond last? The bond will last 15 years and 6 months, which is the same duration as the 2006 bond that will be paid off at the end of this year. It's a great question. Thank you.
Oh, there she is. Okay, very good. Is it for another 15? It's the same one. Okay.
Yes, it's for 15 years and 6 months. Yep.
Oh, there's one. One came in there. Can you see it, Mr. Saxe? Here, I'll publish it.
I noticed. Well, I did, and then it's gone.
It's in the published section.
Oh, okay.
Published.
I noticed. So there's someone asking a question. I noticed out of the 4 schools built before 1945, only 1 is addressed in the CEFP. Why are those not urgent? So that's a great question. Some of our facilities are in better shape than others, and so the bond projects include every bond project that was listed as high priority. So the CEFP projects were listed high, medium, and low, and so we wanted to make sure that in the bond call we were including all of the projects from the CEFP steering committee that were listed as high priority. And then there again, as if the bond is approved and we can address other projects, we will move to moderate and high, or other moderate projects as well. And so that is one of the reasons why just the age of the facility alone wasn't indicative of all of the major needs. Some of our buildings, we've already been able to address windows, doors, roofs, HVACs. And so, depending upon the age, in the buildings that we've listed, those things have not yet been addressed. That was a great question. Thank you. There's a question here on how much will the safe entrances cost. So for the high schools, we've estimated that each high school, based upon square footage and the requirements for the entrances at those sites, will be around $3 million a piece for each high school. Mr. Flowers, there's a question about, can we access the presentation later? And I believe that will be the case. Is that correct? Mr. Flowers, can you hear me?
Sorry about that. I had myself muted. Yes, we are recording it, and we'll be able to publish that for you guys to access later.
All right, thank you. There's another question here. After talking with Dr. D'Antoni and the Career CTE pilot program for middle school students, can we incorporate and have room for basic shop classes for students to take in their own middle school rather than busing each student across the county to the Career Center for one class? I'm not sure I completely understand the question because most of our middle school students don't actually go to the Career Center. There's a few activities they do throughout the year where they are able to go and participate with some of the 9 through 12 programs of study. However, what I will say is as a previous career and technical education teacher, I see the value of being able to do more career and technical education at the middle school level. And while that may not be something that was specifically addressed in the CEFP, that I think that as we continue to look at our facility needs, that could be something that we continue to consider, is being able to try to incorporate more career and technical education programs of study at our middle school sites. I will say, though, that that passage of the bond for our most pressing district issue needs will, I would say, increase the chances that we're able to take care of those facility needs for middle school career technical education programs in the future. I have a question here. What would I consider the most important reason to consider voting yes for this bond? That's a really good question. I truly believe that this bond affects every single student and child in Cabell County. One of the things that I am really proud of is the tradition in Cabell County of being able to maintain the facilities we have, and that's been because of community support. And I think when you open the conversation up to should we consider combining schools in order to reduce costs and those sort of things, it can be very unpopular. And I think the evidence also shows that small community-based schools are more successful, and they meet a wider range of needs of our students, especially from, I would say, a social emotional aspect. And so because the community has spoken loud and clear that they value small community schools and they do not want consolidation, that's what this bond proposal is trying to do. It's trying to be able to take what our community has said that they want, but also take care of the most pressing facility needs that we have. And if we don't have a funding mechanism to take care of these facility concerns and these facility issues that we know we're going to have over the next 10 years, then that creates other stressors on the school district finances. And, we have to be able to make sure that our heating and air conditioning systems are working and have been replaced when they're not operating, to specs, or that we're able to have, learning environments that when the wind blows, you're not hearing a rattle from the window, or you have to have a teacher turn off the air conditioning system. You want your facilities to not have to have leaks in the roof and those sort of things. And so this district has done a great job in maintaining our facilities, but we also acknowledge when the time comes that we need to replace it. And there's only so much money that the district can use to be able to pay for those projects. And having a bond that can be financed to pay for those projects is really an important aspect of making sure that our district finances can be spread out among all of our facilities, but also being able to do other things that we're really proud of in our school district, like being able to feed all of our students free of charge, being able to move our district to one-to-one with the up-to-date technology. Those are all important components of what I think makes the school district successful, and being able to address these facility needs that we've identified and that the steering committee identified as our most pressing is really how it impacts all students. There's a question here. ONA is listed at moderate and high and is one of the oldest and is a high need. I see ... I don't know if it goes on, but you are correct that ONA is listed as moderate to high. As I mentioned before, one of the things that the district team really tried to do is to address all of the high need issues first, and then we went to look to see, okay, what could we do next? And it was really important when we started talking about the different scenarios for a bond proposal that we kept the amount that we're asking the taxpayer to pay on an annual basis relatively similar to what they approved in 2006. And that's how we got to that $87.5 million, which, because if the tax was to be sold at 5%, that's exactly in alignment with what would have happened in 2006. And so as we started looking at the projects that were listed, we were able to get all the high need projects in, but we had a little bit more money left over. And if we were to add a full school rebuild, it was going to add another $7 or $8 million to that 87.5. And so again, we want to be able to go to the taxpayers with something that they feel that they can approve and that they can pay a tax on and not overburden our taxpayers. So while ONA is not listed in the bond, you're exactly right. It is a moderate to high need project, just as Huntington East was a moderate to high need project when the 2006 bond was approved. And as soon as the 2006 bond was approved and they started working on all those projects, the district went to work trying to make sure that they could leverage with the school building authority and their district funds to be able to build a new Huntington East. And I don't consider ONA really as any different, because it is, again, when you look at the priorities, it's right there with moderate to high as well. And it's one of the only other ones that's listed as moderate to high. And so that would naturally become one of the other schools that we would work to address within the 10 years of the 10-year facility plan. There's a question here. What about the tremendous overcrowding at Village of Barbersville? That's another, I think, excellent question. In the facilities plan, one of the high priorities is to look at rezoning for the Village of Barbersville. And as you may be aware, part of that could be addressed with the new Davis Creek if the bond is to be approved. Depending upon where the location is for the new Davis Creek would impact the extent to which redistricting from Village of Barbersville could be for Davis Creek. We can also look at that time when we're talking about, once we know if the bond is approved and where Davis Creek would actually sit, we would then take a look at how would the redistricting for Davis Creek look like, and how could the redistricting for Village be looked at for like Martha or Altizer as well. Doing anything sooner for redistricting Village of Barbersville before the bond would be a little premature, and the reason is that if we were to redistrict now, it could have to be modified as soon as the new Davis Creek plan comes on board. So being able to do all of the questions and the scenarios around what should or how should Village of Barbersville be redistricted to take care of their overcrowding really needs to occur once we know, in fact, is there going to be a new Davis Creek? Is there not going to be a new Davis Creek? And based upon those two scenarios, how should we best, redistrict? And of course, when that process starts, we're going to use the same process that we use to go through to determine our facility needs. We're going to engage the community stakeholders of who would be affected. There'll be public meetings, and of course, there'll be hearings before the board to determine, which scenario the board is actually going to approve for redistricting. I have another question here. This is from Alyssa Bond. What happens if plans go over budget? Where does that money come from? I'm interested in where these new schools are going to be built as well. So if the plans go over budget, then the responsibility is on the school district to fill in the gap. However, I will say that through our financial planning, our bond advisors, our architects that we've engaged in this process, we feel very confident that the budget in the bond for each of these projects will be within the confines of what has been established. But that is something that we have to be conscientious of, and the district would have to be prepared, because if the 2020 bond proposal is approved, then we have a commitment to the taxpayers to make sure all those projects get accomplished. And I think that that's one other thing that Cabell County has done a great job in the past, especially with this 2006 bond, is that every project in the 2006 bond was accomplished. And in fact, when the district went through their financial planning and refinanced the 2006 bond, it paved the way to be able to actually provide additions to Southside Elementary, and a renovation and an addition to Martha Elementary, so that they could have a bigger basketball or gym, physical education space, and a stage. And then that's also what paved the way to be able to add on rooms to Barbersville Middle School, as well as the athletic complex at Milton Middle School. And then her second part of her question was, where will these new schools, where are they going to be built as well? So in each of these projects, there are different options that are listed. I'm going to to answer this question, I'm going to go back to each of these projects real quick, just to try to explain. So when you think about Meadows Elementary, again, Meadows Elementary would be built either on its current site, which I do believe would require us to acquire some homes along Washington Boulevard in order to accommodate that. In this scenario, if it was to be built on its current site, we would not be able to build the school concurrently while students are at Meadows. The school would have to first be raised, and then construction would have to start. So in this scenario, we would need to relocate the students for about 2 years off-site, so that we could build on that current site. The other option for Meadows Elementary is in the vicinity of the current Meadows school zone. So that gives us an option that if a site becomes available that maybe we hadn't once considered, that we could build it within the current Meadows zone, or anywhere in the vicinity of Route 10 on down toward Huntington High School. There is a 45-acre site that is an option there. That 45-acre site is also West Virginia 45 acres, but it has about 13 acres of buildable property for a new Meadows Elementary School. So those are the different options. And again, we won't go through a process where we establish which site will actually be used until we know whether or not the bond has been approved. But there again, once the bond is approved, we will enter into dialogue with the community through stakeholder meetings, through public chats, and then of course through board meetings or board workshops where people could also add their input as to which property and which site is most ideal for the school. When we think about Davis Creek Elementary, the bond specifically cites that this will be relocated to a different site, either in the vicinity of alternate Route 10, so a site that may be conducive along alternate Route 10 in the vicinity of US Route 60. So sites that might become open along Route 60 that could be a good school site, as well as the Brickyard site, which is inside the village of Barbersville, and it's right across the bridge that goes into the park area, and it's near the EMS station. There's about 19 acres there that could possibly be a site, but there's a lot of flexibility in where Davis Creek could reside based upon the options that we have listed in the bond call. And then, of course, Milton Elementary, which would be on its existing site or relocated over to where the old middle school is. The current elementary school, where it currently sits, does have some flooding issues. And the old Milton middle school site did have some flooding issues as well. However, there's a flood wall that's projected to go into that area, and that will change the scope, I guess the floodplain and the floodway, which would make it a more conducive construction site for a school than what it had been in the past. There could be the option of, again, replacing it at its current site by bringing in and elevating the soil, the terrain, so that it's completely out of the floodway. So again, those would be two options for Milton Elementary. And then finally, just to revisit the Career Center, the Cabell County Career Center could be out on its existing site or relocated anywhere. Really, it says anywhere in the vicinity of US Route 60 or the possibility of the Sears location at the Huntington Mall, which again, the Sears location, is a desirable possibility simply because it doubles the square footage. It has all of the high ceilings needed for our high bay programs like welding, automotive technology, construction, masonry, HVAC, electricity, those programs, as well as ample space for our core academic programs that our students participate in as well. I see another question here. Ona is not ADA and not a safe school. How was it determined as moderate? It seems high. Well, again, the steering committee, and reviewing and visiting all of the sites, took a look at the schools that we have and determined high based upon a multitude of factors. While ADA was one major issue that they wanted to be able to address, and we know we need to address, the other sites that were picked and were higher on the list were for a multitude of reasons, like windows. Again, the HVAC, where they still have window units. The proximity to where they are for parent drop off and traffic flow issues, and those type of safety concerns. When we think about Meadows, it has had some issues with the parent drop-off area and backing up traffic on Hal Greer Boulevard in the mornings and in the afternoons. There are, a lot of times parents, in order to avoid it, are parking down a block, and then students are walking to the school and having to cross the road. So we have a crossing guard there. It's in need of a new roof, and it also has ADA issues. Davis Creek Elementary, while we have replaced windows in that school more recently than not, it does not have a sprinkler system. It does have some sewer line issues, which are going to require the hallway to be actually dug up almost about 3 feet in order to replace about 75 feet of sewer line, which is a real problem. The second story of that building, if there was an emergency on the backside, students actually have to walk out onto a roof, which is about a 25-foot drop. So it's really, not a safe. It doesn't have all the safety features that we would like to see in the event there was an emergency. And the bottom of the building, which is where the 4th and 5th grade reside, floods from Davis Creek quite extensively, actually. It also has ADA issues. The only stairwell to get to the downstairs, you have to go outside with a metal cover that's over it. And it has one elevator, which you have to go through a classroom in order to get to. And when you exit the elevator on the bottom floor, you actually have to go. It's an exterior exit to the elevator in order to get to the classrooms. Davis Creek also is the pre-K playground is within like 15 feet of alternate Route 10, 15 to 20 feet of alternate Route 10, and the parent drop-off and pickup is literally right off of the berm of alternate Route 10. I often tell people that it's one of the school sites that gives me the most concern, because I'm always afraid that we're going to have an issue where a young child, as they're getting in or out of mom and dad's car, darts out in front of alternate 10. So that's one of the issues with Davis Creek. And then Milton Elementary School, it needs a new roof. It has the windows are significantly lacking, and it also floods. And so really, the two schools that flood, we're wanting to make sure we're taking care of. The schools that need new windows, new roof, and HVAC, sprinkler systems. Those are why those three schools were slated on the bond project for replacement. And then, of course, Nichols and Heights-Saunders. The windows in Nichols and Heights-Saunders, when the wind blows, they actually rattle. They're an older style window, and we felt like to be able to fill the gap in order to get those projects done, those were both either high or moderate projects as well. So I hope that is able to answer the question. It doesn't decrease the amount of importance of being able to address some of the issues at ONA, but ONA is not, based upon the steering committee's recommendations and walkthroughs, was not as much of a pressing need as those other projects that I just listed. But it's equally as important that we make sure we take care of those issues for our students. And we would be able to do so, I think, quite rapidly once we know whether or not there's a funding mechanism for these projects. Someone said, not sure moving into the Sears building at the mall is the best choice. Are there other locations? I would say that there's other potential locations possibly where we could look at building a site, but the cost of building a shell and doing what we would be doing at Sears or the existing site are kind of limited, because it would probably add another $20 million to our costs. But we don't want to rule anything out, because something may come available that we had never considered before, and so we want to keep that option open. But really, the two biggest options are either renovating and adding on at its current site, or possibly looking at the Sears building, or let's say another large building like it that could be a possible solution. There's a question here: why are we having a special election opposed to trying it in our upcoming election? I think that's a great question. So the first thing is that the sale of the bonds is extremely important, as rapidly as possible. We want to be able to capitalize on the low interest rates, and the longer we prolong the sale of the bonds, depending upon when the election is, could affect a lower rate or a higher rate. And so we know that our interest rates are at an all-time low. So being able to get a vote so that we can go and sell the bonds as quickly as possible at the lowest interest rate possible is an advantage for our citizens. In addition, if based upon the current timeline of August 22nd being the special election, that allows us to appropriately advertise the bonds for sale and to sell the bonds in December of 2020. That then locks us into the lowest rate possible, and then we will begin to it would afford us the ability to begin construction in April of 2021. Now, the reason that construction April of 2021 is so important is that maximizes the amount of construction time available to the contractors that will bid on these projects, so that our new schools can open up in the fall of 2022. And that's a really important thing there, because if we tighten the construction window, the construction costs go up. And so if we were to delay till, let's say, the general election, we would not be able to sell the bonds until later in the 2021 year. That will delay construction being able to start on these projects to mid-July, which shortens that construction window and again drives prices up. So we are at an advantage to maximize several different things: the construction window for these projects to bring the cost of construction down, as well as to take advantage of the low interest rates that we know exist right now. And we know that at some point they're going to start going back up. I have a question here. Will the Board of Education be purchasing the Sears building? If the bond is approved, then we would explore methods in which we could purchase the Sears building. So that would be what would happen. Yes, we would try to purchase the Sears building. Have safety issues been discussed about using the old Sears building? Would Cabell County Schools own, rent, or lease that facility? Our goal here again would be to purchase the Sears building and own it. We would not want to really lease anything like that or rent it, just because that's not something that really any school district has ever really done in the state of West Virginia. And I'm not familiar with what all we would have to go through on that, but it could be something that we explore. But I think our desire would be to own that facility. As it relates to safety issues, yes, in talking with the school administration and some school staff, actually, we have talked about different scenarios in order to address safety and what we would need to do in order to make sure that the space inside is safe and secure, and but it also maximizes the ability for our adult learners and community be able to even utilize that facility for different things as well. But safety and security is going to be a paramount concern in all of the facilities we do, including if we were to have the career and technical education programs at the Sears building at the Huntington Mall. There's a question: is the bond only used for buildings, facilities, or is it also used for curriculum, instruction, staffing, etc.? The bond is only for the construction of our facilities and also furniture. So the furniture and fixtures that would come along with the new facility would also be paid for through the bond dollars. But staffing, instruction, curriculum, those items actually a lot of times come out of our excess levy that we have, as well as our school district general fund. But those would not come out of the school bond. It is important to note, though, that when we think about our general budget does cover other permanent improvement issues with our schools, so like windows, like doors, like roofs, like HVAC issues. We have a place in our general budget that helps pay for those things, and if the bond was not to pass, then obviously we're going to have to make sure that we're able to fund all those things that are still going to be on the priority list from our general budget. I have a question here. Village of Barbersville Elementary redistricting issue was a high priority. Why was GIS program not implemented with master plan? That's a great question. The facility, when we went through the comprehensive educational facilities plan process, the major goal was to determine what the facility issues were and to prioritize those facility concerns. And while the overcrowding at Village of Barbersville was identified and that redistricting would be needed, again, the process for determining what redistricting would look like would need to come after we've been able to address whether or not a new facility would be able to be built that could address some of the overcrowding at Village of Barbersville, before we would say, okay, we're going to redistrict the Village of Barbersville to these school sites. Because again, if a new school was to come in, it could impact where those lines would be. But if the school was not to be built, it would also impact the decisions that would need to be made as to what redistricting would look like and where those boundaries would exist. So really what the process will look like is that if we know that the bond has been approved and we're going to be able to have these facility projects, that's when we moved into what will the redistricting look like for Village of Barbersville. what would the redistricting perhaps look like for Meadows if Meadows was to be moved closer to Huntington High School. Any decision on redistricting before those things would occur would really be premature, because it may really impact what those district boundaries would look like. And so when we move into that conversation as to redistricting, once we know if the bond projects are approved, we will enter into the same type of process that we've used, where again we have stakeholder input, we have community dialogue meetings, and we would utilize the GIS software to be able to show where those new district boundaries or those new school zone boundaries would exist, and which streets or which areas of the zone would go to a new school or reside within the current school district. I have a question here. If you are a proponent for small community schools, what are your plans for Cabell Midland High School? It is one of the largest schools in the state. That's a really good question. To be honest with you, what I probably didn't clarify is I'm a proponent of small community-based elementary schools. I have a unique perspective as it relates to our comprehensive high schools that we have. I was a student when the old Ona Middle School was closed, and that's when Milton High School and Barbersville High School consolidated into Cabell Midland. I can tell you that I was afforded opportunities at Cabell Midland High School that I know I would not have had at the other two high schools had they still been in existence. And I feel that my education was enhanced because of the opportunity to go to Cabell Midland High School and to be able to participate in all of the programs that they had. And one of the things I'm really proud of as superintendent that our high schools have done is they've really built communities within the high schools through our academy programs. The college and career academies that exist at Huntington High School, at the Career Center, and Cabell Midland High School really create a family of learners around, something that's an interesting topic or career choice for those students. And so a lot of times they're able to be with like-minded students that have the same interests, and that really brings a sense of community within the high school as well. I think we also need to consider, as we think about the largeness of those high schools, that it's not for everybody, and I get that. And I think that that's one of the reasons why our Cabell County Career Technology Center has really started to evolve into a third high school. Its enrollment has tripled over the past several years. And now a ninth grader can go to the Career and Technology Center, participate in a CTE course of study, and earn not one, not two, maybe 3 career credentials by the time that they graduate high school. So the Career and Technology Center, I really think, has evolved into a third high school. And I think that as we put the Career Center front and center, and we modernize the facility, we modernize the classroom spaces, and it, for lack of a better term, becomes the new, smaller high school that's emphasizing career and technical education. I think that we're going to see more students from Cabell Midland Huntington High School want to go to the Career Center as well. And so obviously that's going to impact the size of those two high schools, but within reason. If focusing on small community schools is pressing, then why is Davis Creek being moved out of their community? Again, when we're talking about the options for Davis Creek, we're really, moving, depending upon the options that exist, either, in the vicinity of alternate Route 10 or in the vicinity of Route 60 at the end of alternate Route 10. That school is still very close to its community. The interesting thing about where Davis Creek currently sits is it does not sit in a location where, a student could really walk to school or ride their bike to school. It's still a hub of the community because people will drive there. But it's not like a South Side or a Meadows or a High Lawn or even a Village of Barbersville where students can easily walk to that site. So and I don't know that there's the ability based upon its population and where they're located to ever get it to where it's going to be easy for students to get there from a walking or riding a bike or what have you. But I think the most important thing is that we've given options to the Davis Creek community to consider where that school should be located. So maybe it is on alternate Route 10, which is closer to Guyana Estates or where the existing school is, or maybe it is on Route 60 somewhere. I think the possibilities still exist for, to be flexible as to where the school could be based upon what the community will, really desire. I think the most important thing is are we going to prioritize that we need a new Davis Creek? And I think that based upon what I know of the school and what I think many people also know of the school is that the school definitely needs a modernized, safer facility than what they currently have. There's a statement from Mr. Bill Bissett, who is the executive director and CEO of the Huntington Chamber of Commerce. He has posted a comment on the post that everyone can read, but I'm going to just abbreviate here. Both chamber groups voted to support the school bond unanimously for a number of reasons. As this bond replaces a previous bond that is ending prior to the start of the new bond, it does not create a new expense to residents of Cabell County, but rather continues the bond payment to allow for much needed school construction and renovations. It is also important to recognize that these construction projects will bring an investment of more than $100 million into Cabell County at a time when our local economy needs this kind of financial support in jobs, tax revenue, and infrastructure. Furthermore, as many of us work to improve our system of public education, increase our population, and attract professional talent to relocate here, new and improved schools are one way to further these important initiatives. And so I appreciate the Chamber's support for the bond, and I think that you're right. Strong schools build strong communities, and they become places where people want to, move to and raise a family. And so I appreciate the Chamber's support and everyone's support for that matter.
Mr. Saxe, this is Jed Flowers. I just wanted you to know, in the interest of time, because we were trying to stay to an hour.
Sure.
We still have a few questions for you to answer, but I've gone ahead and closed the questions for now.
Okay.
But also offered my email address, and anyone that has any questions can send me an email. We'll make sure we get you an answer. And then, of course, we have these follow-up meetings coming that we'll be posting on our website tonight and on our social media, and you are welcome to attend any of those meetings as well. But there are still quite a few questions for you to answer there, sir.
And I'll be glad to work through those for sure. What would the current trade school be converted to? What is the plan for the vacated building? So under this scenario, if we were to relocate the Career and Technology Center, we would probably look to moving Crossroads Academy, which is our alternative school, to that site because it gives us enough space for that program. The Crossroads Academy has been expanded over the past several years from just a traditional alternative school to a school that also meets the diversity of needs of some of our students. We have a clinical psychologist there. We have several social workers. We also have our Teen Mothers program there. And so it's a site that really takes the social, emotional, and well-being aspect and intensifies the support for those students. And so moving that from our current facility, which is actually located at the end of the old Huntington East Trade School building, that site has some other issues that we would like to rectify, and moving it to the Career and Technology Center location would be a great solution. In addition, our maintenance and operations could also be moved because there's more high bay facilities there for them to be able, for our snow removal trucks, our food service program, our maintenance and operations when it comes to HVACs, technicians, plumbers, construction trades folks that work so hard every single day to keep our school facilities up and running and taken care of. That would be where they would be based out of. So that's one option that we have considered with the old CTE building. I see here a question about what options have you looked at for a new location for Davis Creek Elementary School. I think I've answered that one, but if the person who sent that message did not hear the answer, please email Mr. Flowers and we'll be sure to send you the information that you're requesting there. See another question here. Why was a complete GIS analysis not purchased to assist in the redistricting process and aid for overcrowding? I assume DeJong Richter would also provide these plan options. It seems these options would need to be provided prior to selection of a new Davis Creek site. And I understand, from the outside looking in, why that may be a logical, idea. The thing is that, again, what we have to determine is the redistricting of a school could be impacted by the construction of another school. And so we first have to determine, are we building a new school for Davis Creek before we would take a look at what the redistricting options would be to address overcrowding at Village of Barbersville. Because one option for redistricting may not be enough. We may have to look at several different schools and how those boundaries would need to be modified in order to address the overcrowding for Village. But when the time comes that we've determined whether or not we're going to have a new school for Davis Creek or we're not, that would be when we would start utilizing those GIS projections to show what possible scenarios we could look at for redistricting. And then we would bring that to the Davis Creek community. We'd bring that to the Village of Barbersville community. We may have to take it to the community of Martha or Altizer also, so that they can see how the boundaries may have to change to impact their school size as well. There's a question: who pays for the special election and what is the cost? The special election is paid for by the district, and I don't actually have a cost for you on that, but I can get it and I can provide it in some follow-up. But what I will say is that, because I don't know the specific number, through our analysis of having the special election, we know that having the special election and the costs associated with it completely benefit the school district and the community based upon the savings that we would see in the construction costs by providing a larger time frame of construction as opposed to a tighter time frame of construction. So there is a benefit. There's a benefit to savings for the construction projects by having the special election and not doing it during the general. And then, of course, there's also the savings of the interest rate. If the interest rate was to go up, it would obviously cost more. And so all of those are offset by the cost of the special election. I know that there was a green space issue at Huntington Middle School. Will students be getting that? I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure I was aware of the Huntington Middle School, but I know there was a green space concern at Huntington East Middle School. So I'll try to answer both, though. The green space question around Huntington East is we've been working with Walmart to acquire the property that just sits next to the school so that we can have some site work done so that we can provide a green space. That is not included in the bond, but it is something that the district has already prioritized prior to the bond that we knew we were going to be addressing. And it was something that we really had talked about with the Huntington East community. And so we're continuing to move forward on that and acquiring that property to do that project. But as it relates to Huntington Middle School and Huntington East, there was a question around an athletic facility, and through the steering committee's work, they prioritized, I think it was Moderate, was a shared athletic facility for those two middle schools. And so that is in the 10-year plan. And again, as it relates to the bond, approval, if the bond is approved, it paves the way to be able to do a project like that a lot easier than if we don't have the bond funding for these projects. Who would pay for mitigation at the Brickyard site? It is my understanding that several businesses have wanted to build there, but it has been deemed unsafe. I can't speak to what other businesses have done or anything like that. What I can tell you is that the Brickyard site used to be it used to be a brickyard site, and it is considered a brownfield site. And in 2010 or 2011, it was mitigated to be used for industrial use. So like a manufacturing facility or something like that could go into that site and not have a problem. So further mitigation would be needed, and that would be, built into the cost for the new school if that site was selected. And we have not determined how much that would cost. I mean, it could be, cost prohibitive to use that site if the mitigation costs are too high. It may not be a popular site regardless of that, and we may, need to look at all of the other options as well, which we would do. Why are you building a brand new school for less than 200 children, Davis Creek in Village of Barbersville's backyard? I think that, again, the community has spoken, loud and clear that they value our small schools. And, because we have some small schools that still need, major facility issues addressed, that's why we would be looking at a new Davis Creek. Again, in Village of Barbersville's district is subject to the possibilities that could be used as it relates to where the sites could be selected. I don't think that all of the options are necessarily right there as close to Village like the Brickyard is, but I think there are other options that we can continue to explore. And you have my commitment that I'm going to work with the Village of Barbersville and Davis Creek and all of the other schools that would be impacted by any kind of rezoning or where the schools would need to be located in a very clear and transparent process. The first thing we have to determine is, do we feel that the projects in this bond proposal are worthy of being funded? And once we establish that as a community and as a family of people who are so vested in the future of our students, then I think we can have that open, transparent decision-making process as to where will the school be and how will that impact any kind of redistricting that will need to take place. What about Cabell Midland High School? They have massive leaking from the ceilings where many buckets and trash cans are placed throughout the school, and water continually pours in when it rains. I'm not aware of the rain issue because we just replaced the roof on Cabell Midland High School within the past 2 years. That was about a $2.5 million project that we completed. I do know that we've had some issues with the HVAC systems where condensation lines are leaking, and then that's what happens. But we've been working on replacing all of the chillers and the HVAC units at Cabell Midland High School and Huntington High School for that matter. And actually within the 10-year plan, all of the rooftop units and all of the classroom units are slated for replacement as well. So we are well aware of some of those condensation line issues. And of course, like I said, we have addressed the roof. However, I will say that if there are any items that I'm not aware of, please make sure you email the principal so that they can put appropriate work orders in to make sure those things are addressed. Again, as it relates to any of our schools that there's a question about prioritizing windows, HVAC, and traffic flow as it relates to ADA issues. It's not that the ADA issues are not important. They are extremely important. In fact, that's one of the things that the CEFP steering committee said that we need to be able to prioritize. But I think you have to be able to look at all of the issues in a school combined and that's what the steering committee did, was to prioritize those projects. So not all of the high priority projects included issues with ramps and those sort of things. And so those are still very high priority issues that we know we need to address, and we plan to address those within the next 10 years. But we wanted to be able to fund all of the high priority projects that were identified through the CEFP process first. Between August and April, the BOE will plan to find land, host steering committee meetings, conduct redistricting meetings, and purchase land. Is there a plan for expediting the process? Absolutely. So, when August 22nd hits and we know whether or not the bond has been approved, that's what we're here for. We're here to start putting those plans into action and getting things done. And I'm confident with the team that we have that we're going to be able to get that accomplished. What I have the question here: what percent of students are transfers at Davis Creek? And would you be building the school for students who live in that district or for the transfers as well? So we would be building a school for the students that currently go to Davis Creek, and as well as anybody else that would either be rezoned or may choose to want to go to that school. The percentage transfer students at Davis Creek currently is at 19.5%. And they come from several different schools across the district. I think I had let's see here. I don't think I have any other questions that I can see. Mr. Flowers, do you have any questions that may have come up?
Well, that's your last question since I closed the questions. If anyone has any other questions, they're welcome to email us. My email address there, as you can see, is in the question there, jtflower@k12.wv.us. We'll be happy to help. But that's all that we have up right now, Mr. Saxe.
That sounds great. I think that the most important thing, there has been some great questions here, and I'm glad that all of these questions have been asked. I think it's very important that everyone knows, all of these projects. We're excited about what the potential is for these projects, but we also want to be very clear and transparent about how we've arrived at these decisions, as well as what this means for the school district, for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And I'm excited that you have, attended this evening. I look forward to you attending our future meetings and asking questions. Please don't hesitate to email me. My email address is rsaxe@k12.wv.us. You can also email Mr. Flowers with any questions you may have, so that we can try to get you answers so that you feel comfortable in understanding what all of these projects entail, and hopefully that you feel comfortable with why this bond is so important for our students and our community and our school district. So thank you all, and have a wonderful week.